Okay, this is an Akai AX-60. I got it pretty beat up off of eBay. One of the timer chips had actually rusted out, so I had to fix it. And the sliders were kind of cruddy, and so I decided to kind of modify it. I changed the LEDs to white. I changed all the panel buttons to white. I got new sliders for it, and I put ARP type caps on it because I didn't like those little gray slider caps. But what I want to show in this video is that one thing the Akai AX-60 and 73 and VX90 are kind of notorious for is pretty sort of industrial type sound, and one of the things that people attribute that to is the sort of very harsh resonance that comes off the voice chips that's in here, which are the CEM3394s. And the CEM3394s are also found in other synths, notably the Sequential series, the 6 tracks. And I have that, and a lot of people say that it does sound not as harsh as maybe the Akai AX-60. One of the things I wanted to look at here was the way Akai dealt with the control voltages and the UI on the panel is that instead of fixing the resonance to the upper limit in the data sheet of 3 volts, where you get self-oscillation, maybe 3.5 volts, they allowed that CV to go to 5 volts. So I wanted to make a video on the sound of that, as well as the use of a linear type of slider to drive that CV. And I'm wondering, how much of this is due to the UI design in terms of the slider taper, as well as maybe, driving the CEM3394 to allow it to go to 5 volts on a resonance. Okay, it's a big setup. Let's take a listen. All right, so what I've got here is I've got a basic sawtooth patch on the Akai AX-60, and what we're looking at on the scope is the output waveform from the synthesizer itself. And what I've got on the DVM here is the resonance voltage that's actually going to the pin of the chip. Now again, most manufacturers, on my 6-track, what I measured was the maximum resonance that the 6-track sends to its CEM3394s is about 3.5 volts, but the Akai will go up to 5 volts at the top of the slider. Now a note about the slider, you can see I've changed all my sliders. I've got those sort of white ARP type caps on them. This is the cutoff, and I'm just going to fix him here, and this is the resonance. This resonance slider on the basic UI of the Akai was a linear slider. I changed that to a log slider. And I'm wondering if Akai had done that, whether most people would have been exploring the resonance within sort of the nominal range and maybe rarely got up to 5 volts. So let's just start with a basic sawtooth patch. We'll look at the waveform on the scope. So I'll play that. You can see the waveform sort of evolve. Sort of a classic filter sweep. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the resonance voltage up to about 3.5 volts, which is where the CEM3394 datasheet says you should get self-oscillation. Anywhere above about 3 volts you should get it. So let's take it to 3 volts. So here we go, changing it, we're getting it to about 3 volts. Okay, so there we are. There were 3 volts on the resonance. Let's see how that same filter sweep sounds. Okay, now again, Akai let that CV actually go up to 5 volts, which is unlike sort of the sequential 6-track, which sort of held it at 3 to 3.5 volts. So let's take the resonance voltage all the way to the top. And you can see now we're about 4.95 volts, and now let's take a listen to that. So it sounds kind of, that resonance was kind of more harsh, kind of more unstable than sort of the top value of what the datasheet would recommend. Now again, the thing about the UI is that on the stock AX-60, you'd be hitting 3.5 volts, maybe near half or almost just above halfway of that slider setting. But on mine, when I change it to a log, it's just near the very top. So if we do it where maybe most people on their Akai would see it, they might program it to there and would get about 3 volts of resonance, whereas on mine it's maybe only 2 volts. So let's see how that sounds. So by changing the slider taper, what I sort of wanted to do was to basically allow myself a lot more space prior to the sort of harsh setting. And I'm wondering if Akai had done that, whether the reputation of the Akai AX-60 for sort of the average user might have been different. But by doing this, they sort of gave the Akai a different character than synths that have a much more tame resonance. And so that's it. Thanks.